Yeah, I think we can probably sit here and say, statistically speaking, that if a teenager or a young person, it's probably adults as well, but we'll just stay with young people right now, are probably more likely to have an adverse negative effect related to the antidepressant than any meaningful change in depression or anxiety symptoms. And here we are. I'm sure you're aware of this. Lexapro was just recently approved for children as young as 7 with presenting with anxiety. There was a 6-fold increase in suicidality compared to the placebo group. Let me repeat that again. A 6-fold increase in suicidality. And we're talking about as young as 7 years old. They used 4 outcome measures. 3 of the outcome measures, the drug did not outperform placebo. What was the conclusion of the authors? Lexapro is safe and tolerable for children and adolescents with anxiety. Kim, this is sociopathic criminal behavior.
Yeah, it's really when you hear this, you're like, you are lying and you're misleading the public. And first of all, like just this idea that we keep medicating when we know without informed consent, like parents aren't being told this information and doctors aren't.
No.
And so when you look at even when you start looking, and I'm sure that was that in one of the journals? And then when you start investigating who were the authors, what kind of monies did they get, was it being ghostwritten, or even this recent they reanalyzed, Dr. Healy and Peter Getchy had reanalyzed the original trials and protocols that were used for getting the antidepressants approved in kids. And when you start looking at that, and they didn't even this information. Oh, so then what you see, what the medical journals and how they, wrote about it, it completely conflicts. And so, but our
Right.
doctors, they read the medical journals. It's so wrong. And they don't even understand about, don't get me started, because now I'm going to go on my whole path of, selling sickness, which is, ghostwriting and all the things and the ways that our medical system and most importantly, our doctors who we trust, who they trust. And so the whole system is built on trust that has failed us. And it's intentionally meant to mislead us.
I am starting to lose my patience with the doctors who are making statements that since a drug has met FDA approval, that means it's undergone extensive evaluation and testing, and it proves its safety and efficacy. What are what are the FDA committee members like? Obviously, this is an unelected group of individuals. If you can give us some just insight into the character and the nature of FDA committee members, and given what we know now, how are they able to bring these drugs to market with such poor safety and efficacy?
Yeah, well, first of all, the FDA advisory board is a board that is appointed or voted in by the FDA, and they're outside experts. They usually, when there's a controversial or a new drug coming, they go before the advisory committee, right? And so even if, and the FDA is not bound by the decision or recommendation of the FDA advisory committee. Now, the people that are on my committee, I am the consumer representative, so I represent the public. And there's also usually maybe a patient rep who might have the disease of whatever it is. But the other ones that are on there are academia, researchers, statisticians. You might have a physician, but they're usually somehow aligned with academic institutions. And so I have found when we go in, and most what is happening now, so we were talking about the gold standard of drug approvals, that really isn't even happening anymore. So what's happening now is we're having a lot of breakthrough and accelerated approvals, which means that drugs are getting and coming to, everything's an unmet need. So watch that word. It's a buzzword, unmet need. Like, one of the ones we just reviewed was Resulti, which is an antipsychotic on the market right now, but it just got FDA approval for the Alzheimer agitation. And so this is going to be a big drug, knowing that and this drug has already been on the market. So it's very interesting, but it's an unmet need, meaning there's no drug approved. And so those advisory board committee members, first of all, I always want to say, remember when you come from, I've learned something that is pretty important, like academic institutions and understanding how academia and the researchers. So even if these people, the individuals, don't take money from industry, their institutions might, or their careers depend on getting grants from the NIH, these companies that are being reviewed. And even if they don't personally, if their university does, that could actually hurt them in their own career paths. So I find that interesting. Like for me, I don't have any skin in the game. I mean, I have a lot of skin in the game in that these decisions have real life consequences. That's my skin in the game. But my career, my life doesn't depend. So I'm completely independent of the ties, the monies behind industry. And another thing that I think is really interesting to, pay attention, and I would suggest that everybody at some point go and listen to one of these advisory committee meetings, especially now that everything's on Zoom, because you'll really get an understanding of how the system works and the discussions. Safety is rarely discussed. And if it is, it's discussed in the understanding that it'll probably get caught by a REMS, risk elimination mitigation strategies, which is a FDA program that the companies work with them, which basically says, hey, we're going to look at safety. So everybody assumes safety will be dealt with, even if if there's maybe some safety there, but we don't know what long-term safety is going to look like. It's a small number of people. And also, the other thing with these advisory board committees, I have always said, where is the clinicians, especially like when we're dealing with stuff with kids, where's the pediatrician who's actually in the middle of the country who is actually working with these kids? Not somebody who's sitting inside academia and at that level looking at maybe research or maybe have a few patients. But so these are all things that are, in my mind, things that impact the ultimate decisions between what is really safe and effective. And I think, most people will vote efficacy because, we got to give people more tools in the toolbox. And what people don't necessarily realize is more tools in the toolbox when it doesn't necessarily prove that it works or that we know what safety is. How is that better for the public and better for patients? More tools in the toolbox. These are not the kind of tools that we should be looking at.
Yeah, we're overseeing a system where we see a dramatic increases in chronic illness, obesity, cancer. We're getting sicker and sicker. And I think there's a large percentage of the American population that believes that we live under the beacon of scientific supremacy and we have the best healthcare system in the world. And so there's this mass conditioning that has, I think, infected all of us, that we believe drugs are healthcare. And a lot of these diseases that we accept to be clearly identifiable discrete illnesses are kind of just conditions they make up so we can prescribe another drug.